Hi, I'm Kevin, and I want to show you the cPanel today. I was going to jump into some of the stuff that's normally more exciting for people, but I'm going to go to the first place where you have an opportunity to maybe make decisions that you don't understand the ramifications of. So, if you need hosting, you aren't going to figure out how to get that in this video. I'm not going to go buy a domain. I'm not going to... All that stuff is pretty easy. There's 1,000 videos on YouTube. Anybody can show you that. What I'm going to show you is like some of the baseline security considerations and setup thoughts you want to set up with your cPanel if you're a new business and this is your first kick at the can, or if you've been through this before and never actually considered all the types of things that by default aren't as secure as they could be. So I'm going to move to screen capture here in a second, and I hope you follow along. Alright, so I bought the domain wouldlooklikethis.com. This is where we're going to build all our demonstration stuff. Now once in a while I might go to my actual live site, but I got this domain so that I could do demos, and they'd have awesome subdomain names like Modic would look like this, and business site would look like this. But this is just a place to do demonstrations for my audience that allows me to just kind of be a little willy-nilly and follow best practices even if I wouldn't specifically do that. So you're in the cPanel. This is just a generic cPanel. I have a VPS that's got a little bit of gusto behind the guts, but it is a standard install, which means there are a bunch of things that if you do a security scan on this thing, it will detect. I should have saved the security scanner. Anyways, I'll show you that at a future date. So I'm going to do a couple things right away. So when it comes to email, there are 3 text records that are super important. And normally, you'll only get 2 of them set up right away. So you have your SPF and you have your DKIM, DKIM. And these 2 records, in theory, help prevent spam. Unfortunately, the first thing that you'll discover is they do that, and I want minus all. I don't want other places to be able to send via this domain. So I'm just going to put the minus all. That is infinitely more secure, and you'll find that security scanners tell you about it all the time. The other thing is that if you aren't building an app that requires that somebody's website comes in and actually connects to your database, and it's just your WordPress install at your local system, there's no reason to allow MySQL remote access. The server it's sitting on directly, the local server, the local host, can get to the MySQL. I will be able to install WordPress on this server still, now that I've removed that remote MySQL connection, and it will work just fine. The remote SQL connection was literally allowing the outside internet to connect to my SQL server, which means that if for some reason my password wasn't secure enough or any of those things, somebody could potentially hack my database. And so if you're a business, and you're a business who's decided to run open source software, like I'm going to suggest that I think you probably should, for the flexibility of being able to transport it anywhere, and you actually owning all your data, and you owning all the terms of service, so you're never breaking somebody's terms of service to do what you want to do, because let's be honest, lots of people have done it. If you've ever joined a network marketing company and used MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or Aweber, I'm sorry to say, but you have broken their terms of service. It's the way it is. So if you want to have the flexibility to use tools that you get to own the terms of service. These are things you got to consider. But they don't require outside access to manipulate them, and there's no reason to leave it wide open with the potential for somebody to bypass it, and then you're responsible for the privacy data that has been taken from your server. So I was talking about those other two records on mail. I'm just going to talk about that for one more second. The one that isn't created automatically in most hostings is called a DMARC. I'm going to do an actual video where we go over all three of those. We explain how they work and why they work and what they're for more closely. But just be aware that you might want to make that small change I made initially. I am going to create a couple email accounts, and they're just going to be an admin at this domain and a Kevin at this domain. And it's because I normally set up all my external accounts with the admin account so that later I can share them to my team as I see fit. So there will be a few external accounts. Some of them are going to be paid, some of them are going to be free. I like to choose tools that I can clip in and clip out very easily. So if you're lucky, your cPanel will allow you to run an auto SSL and get nice cPanel SSL certificates for nothing. So there we go. I've got a certificate. It's all claimed up. It's good. You're gonna want to do that as soon as possible. If I had come here prior to recording this video, right after I set up this hosting, you would have seen that those were all gone. If you don't have an SSL certificate that comes through automatically, I strongly recommend you go and get a Let's Encrypt one. There's a couple hosts that I find are better. I'll put a SiteGround host link in the description of this video because I think they're one of the best. I'm using Web Hosting Canada for this one. Now I have a pretty big package with these guys. They have some of the best service in Canada, so if you're Canadian, definitely give them a consideration. But they aren't really better or worse. They have good quality hosting, and that's something you're going to want to Google when you come to it. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you have secure passwords and that you use really secure passwords. I randomly generate my passwords for every single site I use. And then I'm using a password manager to make sure that they're locked in. It does leave me with a single point of failure, but it's actually probably the best way to go about getting it done. I would suggest that if you don't have the space or the capacity to do daily backups, that you still do a daily backup, such as it were. I will come in and do these manually quite often. If it's important to the client, I'll have them assign somebody to log in and do it manually every day so they can just download a full website backup. I have one layer up from here, a full backup that goes to my Google Drive, so I don't have to worry about my web host storage, which was my initial reason for not doing daily full backups or daily incremental backups even. And you only have to have that bite you in the butt one time to know that having to restore a website, especially a website with any amount of user data on it, to a week ago or a month ago, whenever somebody last ran a manual backup, sucks. So don't do it. Beyond that, I like to set up my htaccess. So we're going to go look here. I don't know if I get an htaccess right away. So if you don't see a .htaccess, so I don't, I'm going to install WordPress because it only takes a few seconds. Again, this is super easy. I'm just going to use htaccess. I'm going to choose WordPress. I'm going to click install now. I want to do it with HTTPS. It's going to look like this. I want it right at the root. I'm not sure why it's telling me a trusted certificate couldn't be found. I know that the certificate's there. Demo site. A site for demonstrations. And so these are not goodly. So I'm going to change them to what I'm going to use. As I'm hoping to use this site for many moons, I'm going to not show you all this information. So I'm going to click install, and you're going to see the next screen. And so there we go. From your cPanel, you can actually just click the fun button and it'll take you right to your dashboard. I mostly did this so that there would be a site installed and I get that htaccess I was just talking about. You'll probably have noticed that I've got the strong password generator up here. I have already refreshed the password, so that is not the password for this site, even if you decide you want to check. And now if I go back to the file manager over here, public HTML, you'll see this htaccess. And so what I'm going to do is click edit. And then this opens up, and I mean, these things look pretty standard. Depending on the plugins I install, there'll be more different things. This is just a standard WordPress guess who I am basic descriptor. So, and then we're gonna copy paste in a couple things. I will try to make sure that I put these items into either the description or into a file you can get via a link on the description. I presume I can put this stuff in the description though, so I'm going to give it a try. So I'm just going to grab this from a text editor on my other screen. And there we go. So let's discuss what we're doing here. So I'm turning indexes off. So what indexes are is when you go to a web page and there's no index.html or index file that'll show you a website on the page. If the indexes are on, they will allow you to see the directory structure. Now, just seeing the directory structure isn't technically a security issue. The security issue is if they recognize your directory structure or they can see what the files are, it's going to be much easier to start poking and prodding at stuff with code and actually figure out how to hack your site or find an exploit. Better just to avoid it. This is a super easy one to get caught off guard by. And so I do this through the htaccess because I'm a techie nerd and I've done it this way for a long time. The next couple are stuff that are like, they're important because you don't want somebody to pretend to be your site. So what they're protecting you from is cross-site forgery. So that's where somebody else pretends to be your site and passes data midstream, or you're passing data to another site and somebody catches the data midstream and says they are the site you're trying to pass it to. So it's a bunch of like middleman type hacking that can be done. So that's what these two lines right here are there to prevent. I can break them each down better in another video. I just don't want to let this video ramble too long. And then this line here is about strict transport security. I'm telling the internet that for 1 year, that's a year in seconds, I would like this site to only be allowed to open in HTTPS. So if there's no SSL certificate, you can't open the site. If you try to just open it HTTP, it's going to forward you. And if for some reason this went away, the year-long max age is going to prevent that from just stopping instantly. So this just really locks you into that. I'm going to have an SSL certificate, which is a security certificate, and I'm going to use it. And a lot of guys use the include subdomains call here. I heard it's a good practice by some security guys. But then when I talk to all the other technical people I've got, they tell me it doesn't matter, and I can't understand why it would matter for subdomains, since the subdomain isn't controlled literally through this htaccess. So it's one of those things where I'm not going to add it. This syntax works for me and I like it, so I'm going to leave it just like this. I'm going to save this file. It tells me I've got a success. So now when we do a security scan, and I'm going to open that tab here in just a second. You're going to see that the security scan doesn't find these issues, and it totally would have had we done this security scan prior to adding these items. So there's one more item that I keep feeling like I should add in here, and that's the PHP no or expose PHP. You can turn it off so it doesn't let anybody else know what version of PHP you are on. And again, the reason you might want to do that is because if the header is just announcing it, somebody can just use a script on the internet and just look at every website to see which ones are the exact right version for a known exploit. And they can take advantage of your WordPress install if you haven't updated it, or your Modic install if you haven't updated it, or any other software or plugin that they know for sure. But in this case, it'd be PHP. If there's a exploit in PHP that allows them to backdoor your software, you don't want to make it easy for them to detect it. So this would be a controversial conversation too, in my opinion, because just because they can't call the header, call it out of the header on your site, I can think of other ways to bypass that. So this is one of those, if you paint your door of your house the same color as your house, it'll probably be harder to identify your door in the middle of the night. But that doesn't mean they can't find your door, right? If you're using an insecure or old version of a software and there is a hole in it, just because you've made it harder for them to find it doesn't mean that they can't find it. So don't take this as a security precaution that is a big deal. But understand that sometimes when you're doing security checks, you'll get flags if you're exposing your PHP, and that's the big one. So there's my htaccess done. that htaccess really genuinely looks like every htaccess you'll ever see on some level. Like, man, WordPress does that a lot. And so essentially we're at the point where I'm reasonably confident that I could scan this site and I would come up with no major security breaches. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open a new tab. And so now we're just going to look for would look like this. And so there's a medium security. It says I have no HTTP to HTTPS found. I should be redirecting my website visitors to HTTPS version to avoid the not secure browser. But that is literally what that one piece of htaccess code I put in does. So what I like about these guys here, as far as website security checking goes, is they give you really good directions on what happened. So then you ask, and it's like, oh, there should be a rewrite rule that says this. All right, I can get behind that. And so where we're just at, exactly the same as we just discussed, I'd go back here. Once again, I'd go to my file manager. Showed you that if it's not exposed instantly, you have to click up there so you can see it. And I would just put the rewrite rule in. So save. And then I go back and I'd scan this again. And I'm actually pretty happy that it complained about that and it gave me the fix. And bam, I'm now a low security risk. Had I not gone out of my way to add those other things, so they're correct. I think there's a firewall at a higher level. I don't have any firewall or any plugins at all installed at my WordPress level, which is what they're kind of looking at. But so, like, at this point, I'm a low security risk. That should make me feel more comfortable. I mean, it's not perfect. I still need to protect my passwords. That's why I use god-awful long random generated passwords. I need to make sure that everything stays up to date, or that I'm using as best possible the newest version of software I can, or that I've patched security-wise any holes that are known and on the internet. The glory of information is it's super shareable now, right? But it's also bad. So those are my considerations. Check out security.net if you want to do a site check yourself and see what you've got going on. Remember that htaccess is a good place to secure your site a bit. The other one I've used, scanmyserver.com. I think this one. Yeah, so beyond security, I like this one. I actually pay for this one. But I would not say, I would suggest you pay for it. But if you're starting out or you haven't got any traffic, or you don't, like, use the free service here if you want. They'll only let you scan your site once a week. That's why I didn't show you this one now. I like these guys better, especially when I'm right off the hop. And just remember that security is essential. You don't want somebody to hack your WordPress and take over your cart. You don't want a bad piece of software in your WordPress install to allow somebody to take your data. You don't want outward-facing opening to spontaneously have a security issue. And what happens is it feels spontaneous, because what ends up happening is somebody finds a security issue that was there the whole time. And the companies are in an arms race to patch this stuff up. And if you don't get those patches, all of a sudden somebody can hack you if you've already given them that opportunity, right? All I did was go into this remote SQL and deleted that external host, and it looks like my provider puts this back. The other provider I had didn't. But keeping that locked down is going to make a world of difference, and making sure that you have an SSL certificate also really matters. Get those locks in place so that when you end up at would-look-like-this.com, you're looking at just a standard old WordPress website, and you know that at least as far as you can, you're secure. I'm going to talk about plugins. I'm going to talk about security plugins when it comes to WordPress. We're going to integrate a marketing automation software that I think is fantastic. I'm going to talk about that a lot more. But I think this video is long enough, and so I'm going to stop it there, and I will talk to you again soon. Love you guys.